June 21, 1943. Western Pacific Ocean south of the Marianas. The sea is calm in the early morning light, a flat sheet of steel stretching to every horizon. The only sound is the steady drone of a single-engine aircraft cutting low over the water. Lieutenant James Jim Parker, U.S. Navy, grips the controls of his SBD Dauntless dive bomber as the engine coughs, once, twice, then settles into an uneven rhythm that sends a chill through his chest. He glances at the oil pressure gauge. The needle is sinking fast. A thin trail of black smoke curls back over the canopy. "Come on, just a little farther," he mutters, forcing the aircraft toward what the charts promise is open water, away from any enemy-held islands. It doesn't matter. The engine gives a final metallic shriek and dies. The propeller freezes in place. Wind screams across the wings. The Dauntless drops like a stone. Parker shoves the nose down, trying to keep control as the ocean rushes up to meet him. He's trained for this. He's practiced it. But no amount of training prepares you for the moment when your aircraft becomes a dead weight and gravity takes over. The plane slams into the water with bone-jarring force. Metal screams. The canopy shatters. Cold seawater floods the cockpit. Parker unbuckles, claws his way free, and breaks the surface, gasping for air as the Dauntless sinks beneath him, bubbles marking its grave. For a few seconds, there is only the sound of his own breathing and the slap of waves against his life vest. And then he hears it. A low, mechanical rumble. The water nearby begins to churn. Parker turns just as a dark shape breaks the surface, first the conning tower, then the long, sleek hull of a Japanese Imperial Navy submarine. White water cascades off its deck as it rises fully into the sun. An I-class boat. He freezes. This is not rescue. Hatches fly open. Sailors in dark blue uniforms spill onto the deck, rifles leveled. One officer steps forward, binoculars raised, studying Parker as if he were a curious specimen pulled from the sea. A voice rings out, sharp and commanding. "Boom arrow. Capture him." A small launch splashes into the water. Oars bite hard. In moments, rough hands seize Parker's arms and drag him toward the sub. He doesn't resist. Resistance would mean a rifle butt to the skull or worse. They haul him aboard, strip him of his sidearm and survival knife, and shove him to his knees on the wet steel deck. Sailors crowd around, whispering, pointing at the American flight suit, the insignia on his collar. The officer with the binoculars steps closer. He is lean, sharp-eyed, his sword hanging at his side. A commander, Kaiganshosa, by the look of his insignia. The officer speaks slowly, deliberately in Japanese. Name, rank, unit. Parker lifts his head and answers without hesitation. Lieutenant James Parker, United States Navy, Air Group 12. The deck goes silent. The officer stiffens. Sailors exchange glances, unsure they heard correctly. The commander steps closer, eyes narrowing. "You speak Japanese," he says. Not a question. Parker meets his gaze. His voice is calm, precise, no accent, no hesitation. "Yes, sir." For a long moment, the only sound is the creak of the submarine's hull and the distant cry of seabirds overhead. Then the commander gives a short, sharp laugh, more surprise than amusement. "Well," he says quietly, switching back to Japanese, "this is unexpected." Parker is blindfolded and pushed below decks, down narrow ladders into the dim, oil-scented belly of the submarine. The air is hot and stale, thick with diesel fumes and sweat. He knows exactly where he is. And he knows exactly what comes next. Hours later, in a cramped compartment lit by a single swinging bulb, Parker sits on a metal bench, wrists bound. Across from him, the submarine's commander removes his gloves with deliberate care. "This war," the commander begins, "is full of surprises." He leans forward. "But an American pilot who speaks our language like a native, that is something else entirely." Parker says nothing. He keeps his face neutral, his breathing steady, just as he was trained. The commander studies him closely. "You were not taught this in a few weeks," he says. "Where did you learn?" Parker finally speaks. "In America." The commander's eyes sharpen. "In America," he repeats softly. "Then you are not merely a pilot." The submarine's engines rumble back to life, turning the vessel eastward toward Japanese-controlled waters. Parker feels the deck vibrate beneath his feet. The realization settles in his gut like a stone. He has not been captured by soldiers in the heat of battle. He has been taken by the Imperial Japanese Navy, and his language, the very skill meant to protect him, has just made him infinitely more valuable. And infinitely more dangerous. June 23, 1943. Aboard Imperial Japanese Navy submarine I-176, Philippine Sea. The submarine dives at dawn. Ballast tanks flood with a hollow roar, and the deck beneath Lieutenant James Parker's boots tilts sharply. He feels the pressure change in his ears as the I-176 slips beneath the surface, sealing him inside a moving steel coffin. Below decks, the air grows thicker with every passing minute. Parker sits cross-legged on the compartment floor, his back against a bulkhead slick with condensation. Around him, sailors move with practiced efficiency, hands spinning valves, boots clanging on ladders, quiet commands exchanged in clipped naval Japanese. They speak freely. Too freely. An aviator, not a sailor. His pronunciation, Tokyo Standard. Perhaps educated in Japan. Parker keeps his eyes down, breathing slowly. Every word reaches him with dangerous clarity. This is the first rule they drilled into him at Camp Tracy, the U.S., Navy's classified language and interrogation training site in California. Never react to what you understand. He had spent 2 years there before the war, long hours memorizing dialects, honorifics, naval terminology. He'd studied under Nisei instructors and former missionaries, learning how Japanese officers thought, how they spoke when relaxed, how they spoke when angry. And now every lesson is being tested. A hatch clanks open. 2 sailors enter and gesture sharply. Lie. Stand. Parker rises. His wrists are freed, not out of kindness but confidence. They no longer fear him running. There is nowhere to go. He is escorted through the narrow passageways, past torpedoes secured in their racks, past bunk-stacked 3 high-wear off-duty sailors lie half asleep in the heat. The smell of oil, sweat, and metal is overwhelming. They bring him to the wardroom. The submarine commander waits there, seated at a small table bolted to the deck. A chart of the Western Pacific is pinned behind him, marked with grease pencil lines showing shipping lanes and patrol zones. The commander gestures for Parker to sit. "This will be easier," he says in Japanese, pouring tea into 2 chipped cups, "if you answer honestly." Parker sits. He does not touch the tea. "You are not like the others we have captured," the commander continues. "Most Americans shout, they pretend not to understand. You." He pauses. "You listen." Parker chooses his words carefully. "I understand questions," he replies. "That doesn't mean I answer them." A flicker of amusement crosses the commander's face. "Fair," he says. "Then let us begin simply." He opens a folder, water-stained, its edges curled, and slides out a photograph. It shows Parker in uniform, taken before deployment. "Your name we know, your rank we know," the commander says. "What we want to know is why you were taught our language." Parker meets his eyes. "I was trained as an intelligence officer," he says. "It is true and safely." The commander nods slowly. "Then you understand," he says, "that intelligence officers are not protected like ordinary prisoners of war." The implication hangs in the air. Parker feels his stomach tighten, but his face remains still. Outside the wardroom, the submarine shudders slightly as it changes course. The propeller's hum deepens, a sound Parker recognizes as cruising speed. They are not heading for a frontline base. They are going somewhere quieter. "Tell me," the commander says, leaning back, "how many submarines protect your carrier groups?" Parker exhales. "I can't answer that." The commander smiles thinly. "You answer many things already," he says. "Your silence tells us where to press." He closes the folder. "For now you will be confined, tomorrow others will speak with you." Parker is led away again, this time to a smaller compartment near the bow. The hatch closes behind him with a final metallic clang. Alone, he finally allows himself a long breath. He thinks of Lieutenant Commander Eric Nava, his instructor at Camp Tracy, pounding a fist on the classroom table. "If they realize what you are," Nava had said, "you don't belong to the army anymore. You belong to their intelligence service." Hours pass. The submarine rocks gently. Somewhere forward, a sailor coughs. Another hums softly an old folk tune. Then, late into the night, the hatch opens again. 2 men enter, but these are not submariners. Their uniforms are crisp, their posture rigid. One wears the insignia of naval intelligence. The other carries a leather case. The older of the 2 sits across from Parker. "I am Commander Ishikawa," he says calmly. "I specialize in enemy psychology." He studies Parker with cool interest. "You are very far from home, Lieutenant," Ishikawa says. "And your talents have placed you in a most unfortunate position." He opens the leather case, revealing notebooks, pens, and a small recording device. We will talk, Ishikawa continues, for as long as it takes. The light bulb above them sways gently as the submarine cuts through the black water. Parker knows in that moment that this is no longer about survival alone. Every sentence he speaks or refuses to speak may shape the fate of men he will never meet, battles he will never see. And the war has only just begun for him. June 26, 1943. Yokosuka Naval District, Japan. The submarine surfaces before dawn. Parker senses it before he hears it, the change in pitch, the slight lift beneath his feet as the I-176 breaks through the skin of the sea. When the hatch opens, cool coastal air floods the compartment, sharp and clean compared to the suffocating atmosphere below. He is escorted topside under armed guard. Gray mountains loom in the distance, their slopes half hidden by mist. Ahead lies Yokosuka, one of the Imperial Japanese Navy's most important bases. Dry docks, fuel depots, radio towers, this is not a prison camp. This is the brain of the fleet. Parker is marched down the pier past sailors who stop to stare openly. Word has traveled faster than the submarine itself. An American who speaks like one of us. He is handed over to naval police and transported inland in a covered truck. The city slips by in fragments through slits in the canvas, wooden houses, bicycles, women in plain wartime clothing. No cheers. No taunts. Just curiosity. The building they bring him to is low and unmarked. Concrete walls. Shuttered windows. Inside, the temperature drops noticeably. An interrogation facility. Parker is seated at a wooden table bolted to the floor. A single lamp hangs overhead, its light harsh and unforgiving. Across from him sit two men. Commander Ishikawa, immaculate calm eyes like polished stone. And a younger officer Parker hasn't seen before. Lieutenant Tanaka, Army Intelligence Liaison. His uniform is crisp, his posture aggressive, his gaze openly hostile. Tanaka speaks first. You are educated, he says in Japanese. Yet you fight against us, why? Parker doesn't answer immediately. Silence is not defiance, it's control. Ishikawa nods approvingly. Lieutenant Parker, Ishikawa says, we have reviewed your background, university studies, linguistics. You were recruited before the war. Parker raises an eyebrow slightly. Impressive research, he replies. Your files are missing some chapters. Tanaka slams his palm on the table. You will not mock us. Ishikawa lifts a finger. Tanaka falls silent. This, Ishikawa says mildly, is precisely why we speak Japanese today. Language is power, it removes masks. He leans forward. You know our customs, you know our values, you know that honesty is respected. Parker meets his gaze. And you know, Parker replies, that forced honesty is meaningless. For the first time, Ishikawa hesitates. The interrogation stretches into hours. They shift tactics constantly, friendly conversations, sudden accusations, long silences meant to fray the nerves. They ask about carrier tactics, radar frequencies, submarine patrol zones. Parker gives them nothing of value. But he gives them something else. He corrects Tanaka's grammar. It's subtle. Almost reflexive. Tanaka bristles. You think yourself superior, he snaps. No, Parker answers calmly. Just fluent. The room goes very still. Ishikawa studies Parker with renewed intensity, not anger but fascination. You understand, Ishikawa says slowly, that most prisoners do not survive long interrogations. Parker nods. I understand, he says. And you understand that killing me answers nothing. Another pause. Outside, footsteps echo down the corridor. A distant door slams. Ishikawa exhales. You were trained to resist us, he says. But you were also trained to observe us. Parker says nothing. You hear things others do not, Ishikawa continues. You understand nuance, tone, meaning. He taps the table lightly. Tell me, Lieutenant, what do you think of Japan? The question is a trap. Parker chooses truth, carefully measured. I think Japan is fighting a war it cannot win, he says. And doing so with remarkable discipline. Tanaka surges to his feet. That is treasonous propaganda. Ishikawa remains seated, eyes narrowed. Or professional assessment, Ishikawa counters quietly. He leans closer to Parker. You were not meant to be shot down, he says. You were meant to listen, to translate, to advise commanders. Yes, Parker says. On my side. Ishikawa smiles faintly. And now, he says, you advise us by refusing. The lamp flickers. At last Ishikawa stands. For now, he says, you will be transferred. Where? Parker asks. Ishikawa pauses at the door. To a place where minds are studied, he replies. Not broken. Parker is escorted out, down a different corridor into a waiting vehicle. As the doors close, he catches a final glimpse of Tanaka, furious, humiliated. The truck pulls away. As Yokosuka fades behind him, Parker realizes something unsettling. They are no longer trying to extract information from him. They are trying to understand him. And in war, understanding can be as dangerous as any weapon. July 3, 1943. Central Honshu, Japan. Rain drums steadily against the truck's canvas roof as it climbs into the mountains. The air grows cooler with every mile, the coastal humidity giving way to the sharp scent of pine and wet earth. Lieutenant James Parker sits silently between two guards, hands folded in his lap. His restraints are gone again, not out of trust but calculation. The Japanese know escape here would be impossible. When the truck finally stops, Parker hears the sound of a river somewhere below and the creak of trees swaying in the wind. The facility is small, purpose-built, hidden. Not a prison camp. A research compound. He is led through a wooden gate into a courtyard where men in civilian clothing move between buildings carrying files, charts, books. No rifles. No barking orders. Scholars. Inside, Parker is given a room barely larger than a monk's cell. A futon, a desk, a small window looking out over the valley. For the first time since his capture, he is alone. That night he is served rice, miso soup, and fish, simple, carefully prepared. He eats slowly, listening to the rain and the distant rush of water. The next morning the questioning resumes, but not like before. Parker is brought into a bright room with wide windows. No harsh lamp. No shackles. Across from him sit three men, all older, all in plain suits. One introduces himself in flawless English. Professor Kobayashi, he says. Linguistics, Tokyo Imperial University. Parker blinks. You're not military, he says. Kobayashi smiles gently. On the contrary, he replies. In total war, everything is military. The sessions are long and unsettling. They do not ask about ships or aircraft. They ask about how Americans think. Why do American pilots joke before missions? Why do American officers argue with their superiors? Why do enlisted men address officers so casually? Parker answers in abstractions, careful to avoid specifics. He frames everything as culture, not doctrine. But the most dangerous moments come when they switch languages without warning. They begin in Japanese. Shift to English mid-sentence. Then back again. They are testing him. Measuring reaction time. Emotional tells. Stress points. At one point, Kobayashi leans back and says casually in English, "If we had 10 men like you, the Pacific War would look very different." Parker does not respond. He has learned the most important rule of captivity. Flattery is a blade. Days turn into weeks. Parker is allowed books, Japanese poetry, English novels, technical manuals already years out of date. He is allowed exercise in the courtyard under light supervision. No beatings. No shouting. And yet the pressure is constant. Every conversation is a probe. One afternoon, Commander Ishikawa returns. "You are valuable," Ishikawa says, walking beside Parker along the gravel path. "That protects you for now." Parker stops. And later, he asks. Ishikawa does not stop walking. "That depends on how this war turns," he replies. That night, Parker overhears two guards talking outside his window. The American speaks like a Japanese. Dangerous. Some say he understands us better than we understand ourselves. Parker lies awake, staring at the ceiling. He thinks of home. Of the instructors who warned him this might happen. Of the quiet, terrifying irony of his situation. His greatest weapon, language, has made him impossible to ignore. In late July, the tone shifts. Maps appear in the rooms again. Naval charts. Aircraft silhouettes. The scholars withdraw. Military men return. One morning, Ishikawa sits across from Parker and folds his hands. "We have intercepted communications," he says. "Your forces are advancing." Parker remains expressionless. "The war will demand choices," Ishikawa continues. "You can remain a prisoner or you can be useful." Parker understands instantly. They do not mean information. They mean translation, interpretation, psychological insight. "You want me to work for you," Parker says. Ishikawa nods. You would save lives, he says softly, including your own. The rain begins again outside, heavy and relentless. Parker looks down at his hands. For the first time since his capture, the threat is no longer physical. It is moral. And it weighs far heavier than chains. August 12, 1943. Mountain Intelligence Compound, Honshu. Morning fog hangs low over the valley, swallowing the river and the lower slopes of the mountains. From Parker's window, the world looks suspended, quiet, distant, unreal. Inside the compound, the atmosphere has changed. Doors once left ajar are now closed. Conversations stop when Parker passes. New faces appear, naval officers with hard eyes and field-worn uniforms, men recently returned from the Solomon Islands and the Central Pacific. They bring the war with them, still clinging to their boots. Parker is escorted to a different building than usual. Inside, the room is smaller. No windows. A single table. 2 chairs. Commander Ishikawa is not alone this time. The man beside him wears army green, not navy blue. His collar tabs mark him as Colonel Masanobu Hayashi, Kempeitai, military police and counterintelligence. Hayashi does not offer tea. You are running out of usefulness as an observer, Hayashi says bluntly, speaking Japanese with a clipped regional accent. Now you will become a participant. Parker remains standing. In what capacity, he asks. Hayashi slides a document across the table. Transcripts. Intercepted radio traffic. Prisoner interrogations, American, Australian, British. We want you to translate, Hayashi says. But more than words, meaning, intention. Parker scans the pages. These are POW interrogations, he says. Yes. Some of these men are civilians, Parker adds quietly. Hayashi's eyes harden. You are in no position to lecture us on legality. Ishikawa finally speaks. This is your opportunity, he says calmly. You may refuse, but refusal will change how you are treated. Parker looks up. Is that a threat? It is reality, Ishikawa replies. For several seconds no one speaks. Parker pushes the documents back across the table. I will not assist in the interrogation of prisoners, he says. In any language. Hayashi's chair scrapes sharply as he stands. You will, he snaps, or you will be sent somewhere far less academic. Parker meets his gaze. Then send me. The room goes very still. Ishikawa closes his eyes briefly, then exhales. Colonel, he says, this man is not bluffing. Hayashi stares at Parker, jaw clenched. At last he snorts in disgust and turns away. You Americans, he mutters. Idealists to the end. The decision is made. That night Parker is moved again, this time not deeper into the mountains but back toward the coast. The guards are rougher. The silence is longer. When he arrives, he understands immediately. The camp is larger, older, surrounded by barbed wire. A POW transit facility. Here Parker is no longer a curiosity. He is just another enemy officer. But his reputation precedes him. Within days, guards begin bringing him other prisoners, quietly, unofficially. Men beaten during questioning. Men who speak no Japanese and have no idea what is being demanded of them. Tell us what they want, one whispers desperately. Parker does what he can. He translates orders, explains procedures, warns men when silence is safer than speech. He never speaks to Japanese officers on their behalf. It is a narrow line, razor thin, but he walks it carefully. In late September, an air raid siren howls over the camp. American bombers roar overhead, unseen beyond the clouds. Anti-aircraft guns thunder in response. The guards scatter. For a brief moment, chaos reigns. A young private grabs Parker's sleeve. Lieutenant, he says urgently, you could run. Parker looks at the fence. The towers. The hills beyond. He shakes his head. They'd shoot you for it, he says. And me. The bombs fall somewhere distant. The sirens fade. That night, Parker sits on his bunk, listening to men whisper about home, about rumors of landings, about the war turning slowly, inexorably. He realizes something then, something both terrible and grounding. His war is no longer about escape. It is about endurance. About holding the line inside himself until someone somewhere breaks through. And outside the wire, far beyond the mountains and the sea, the war is indeed changing, whether his captors realize it or not. February 19, 1944. Prisoner of war camp, Eastern Honshu. Winter has tightened its grip on the camp. Snow lies in dirty ridges along the fences, churned by boots and stained by soot from the cookhouse chimney. The wind cuts through the wooden barracks, finding every crack, every weakness. Men sleep fully clothed, breath fogging the air above their bunks. Lieutenant James Parker has been here 5 months. Long enough to know the rhythm of the guards' patrols. Long enough to recognize which sentries can be reasoned with and which cannot. Long enough to hear the war changing through fragments of conversation never meant for him. He hears it in the radio room when doors are left ajar. Another carrier lost near truck. Fuel shortages. American landings again. The tone is different now. Less confident. More brittle. One afternoon, Parker is summoned unexpectedly. No shouting. No rifle butts. Just a quiet order and an escort to the administration building. Inside, he finds Commander Ishikawa waiting. He looks thinner. Older. The war is not progressing as planned, Ishikawa says, skipping formalities. You know this. Parker nods. I know what I hear. Ishikawa studies him carefully. You have helped your fellow prisoners, he says. You have also refused every opportunity to assist us. Yes. And yet, Ishikawa continues, you have not attempted escape, you have not incited unrest. No, Parker replies. Why? Parker answers honestly. Because I'm still useful to someone. Ishikawa exhales slowly. The army wants you transferred, he says. Somewhere harsher. Parker feels the weight of that sentence settle in his chest. And the Navy, he asks. Ishikawa hesitates. The Navy understands language, he says quietly. And consequences. Days pass. And then weeks. The transfer never comes. Instead, food rations improve slightly. Interrogations cease altogether. Guards grow less cruel, not kinder but distracted. In June, American bombers appear overhead more frequently. This time the explosions are closer. Much closer. The ground shakes. Windows rattle. The guards no longer pretend this is temporary. One night after a heavy raid, the camp commander gathers the prisoners. You will remain calm, he announces stiffly. Any disorder will be punished. Parker watches his hands tremble as he speaks. In August, Parker is called in once more. This time, Ishikawa is not in uniform. He wears civilian clothes. The Navy no longer requires my services, Ishikawa says. Nor it seems does the Empire. Parker says nothing. Ishikawa looks at him, eyes tired but clear. When this war ends, he says, men like you will be asked difficult questions. And men like you? Parker asks. Ishikawa gives a faint, rueful smile. We will be asked whether we understood the world we fought. He bows deeply. It is the first gesture of respect Parker has received from any Japanese officer. In early 1945, the bombers come daily. Firestorms bloom over nearby cities, painting the night sky orange. Ash falls like snow over the camp. Guards whisper of families lost, of homes erased. On August 15, 1945, the sirens do not sound. Instead, the camp commander gathers the prisoners again. His voice is hollow. The war is over, he says. By order of His Majesty. No cheers. No shouting. Just silence. Men look at one another, stunned. Parker closes his eyes. For the first time in over 2 years, the weight lifts, just a little. Weeks later, American troops arrive. Medical officers, translators, photographers. One of them stops short when Parker speaks. You were intelligence, the officer says quietly. Weren't you? Parker nods. Back home, his reports will be read carefully. His survival will be studied. His language skills, once a liability, will be cited as a lesson in restraint, discipline, and the strange power of understanding the enemy too well. But for now, standing beyond the wire, Parker breathes deeply. The war that began with an engine failure and a rising submarine has ended. Not with victory in battle, but with survival in silence.